As a graphic designer, I often found myself scavenging for unique items that could inspire my work. So, when I stumbled upon an antique mirror at a garage sale one crisp autumn morning, I couldn't resist. It was an ornate, Victorian-style mirror with intricate carvings on the frame and a glass that seemed almost too perfect for its age. The elderly woman selling it seemed eager to part with it, and I managed to negotiate a fair price. I took it home, excited to hang it in my home office. My home office was a sanctuary of sorts. It was filled with various objects I had collected over the years, vintage posters, quirky knickknacks, and now, this beautiful mirror. I hung it on the wall opposite my desk, where I could see it from my chair. At first, it seemed like a perfect addition. It had a touch of elegance to the room and reflected the natural light beautifully. A few days after hanging the mirror, I began to notice something odd. While working on a design late one night, I glanced up at the mirror and saw my reflection. But something seemed off. My reflection didn't match my movements perfectly. It was subtle at first, a delayed blink, a slightly different tilt of the head. I chalked it up to my tired eyes playing tricks on me and dismissed it. The next day, as I was working on a particularly challenging project, I noticed the discrepancies again. This time, they were more pronounced. My reflection seemed to be smirking at me, a sinister expression that I knew I wasn't making. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, but everything seemed normal. Still, a nagging feeling of unease settled in my stomach. Over the next few weeks, the anomalies became more frequent and more unsettling. I would catch glimpses of my reflection making slight, almost imperceptible movements when I was perfectly still, a twitch of the eye, a faint smirk, the fingers tapping against the frame. It was as if the mirror was alive, subtly mocking my sanity. One evening, I invited my friend Kevin over to help me unwind. We sat in the living room, laughing and chatting, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As Kevin got up to get another drink from the kitchen, he paused in front of the mirror. "Hey, did you move the mirror?" he asked, sounding puzzled. I turned to look, my heart skipping a beat. The mirror was slightly tilted, something I was sure I hadn't done. "No, I haven't touched it," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Kevin shrugged it off, but I could feel the tension growing in my chest. That night, after Kevin left, I found myself drawn to the mirror again. I sat in my office, staring into the glass, the faint light from my desk lamp casting eerie shadows. My reflection stared back, but there was something in its eyes, a glint of malice that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't help but feel that it was daring me to uncover its secrets, to delve deeper into the darkness that lurked just beyond the surface. My nights became restless, haunted by dreams of my reflection coming to life and stepping out of the mirror. I would wake up drenched in sweat, the lingering sense of dread making it impossible to fall back asleep. Each morning, I felt more exhausted, my nerves fraying with each passing day. The tension reached a breaking point one night when I noticed a new, more disturbing anomaly. As I was brushing my teeth, I looked up to see my reflection smiling back at me with a sinister grin. My own mouth was closed. My stomach dropped, and the toothbrush slipped from my hand, clattering into the sink. I backed away, heart racing. I could feel the reflection's eyes on me, watching my every move. I left the bathroom and closed the door, but I knew it was still there, waiting. Determined to get rid of the mirror, I decided to destroy it. In the dead of night, I wrapped it in a blanket and drove to a secluded spot in the woods. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow on the surroundings. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, but I pressed on. I found a clearing and placed the mirror on the ground. As I raised a large rock to smash it, I saw a shadowy figure behind me in the reflection. It was tall and featureless, its eyes glowing faintly. I spun around, but there was no one there. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned back to the mirror. In a panic, I brought the rock down hard on the glass. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, the shards scattering across the ground. A deafening roar filled the air, and I felt a cold, malevolent presence wash over me. I fled back to my car and sped home, convinced that I had rid myself of the cursed mirror. Exhausted, I stumbled into my office and froze. The mirror was back on the wall, whole and unbroken. My reflection stared at me with a triumphant grin. heart sank, and I felt a wave of hopelessness wash over me. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I started researching antique mirrors, looking for any information that could explain the strange occurrences. I found countless stories and legends about haunted mirrors, cursed mirrors, and mirrors that acted as portals to other worlds. None of the stories matched my exact experience, but they all hinted at one thing: mirrors could be dangerous. I contacted the elderly woman who sold it to me, hoping she could provide some answers. She seemed reluctant to talk, but eventually told me that the mirror had belonged to her grandmother, who had been a reclusive and mysterious woman. She warned me to be careful, saying that the mirror had always given her an uneasy feeling. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the mirror and the strange behavior of my reflection. I decided to set up a camera in my office, pointing it directly at the mirror, hoping to catch something on tape. I spent hours reviewing the footage, but nothing out of the ordinary appeared. Frustrated, I turned off the camera and went to bed. As I lay in the dark, I heard a faint sound. It was so soft that I could barely make out the words, but it seemed to be coming from the direction of my office. I got up and cautiously made my way down the hallway. The sound grew louder as I approached the office. My heart pounded in my chest as I opened the door. The mirror was glowing faintly, an eerie, unnatural light emanating from the glass. My reflection was there, but it looked different, more sinister and more alive. It was as if the reflection was a separate entity, trapped behind the glass, and it was trying to communicate with me. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move or look away. Suddenly, the reflection reached out, pressing its hands against the inside of the glass. The surface of the mirror rippled like water, and I felt a cold chill run down my spine. The reflection's mouth moved, forming words that I couldn't hear. It was as if the mirror was a barrier between our worlds, and the reflection was desperately trying to break through. I snapped out of my trance and backed away from the mirror, slamming the door shut behind me. I spent the rest of the night in my bedroom, too afraid to go back to the office. The next morning, I decided that the mirror had to go. I couldn't risk having that malevolent presence in my home any longer. But the mirror wouldn't let me go that easily. Strange things began happening. My computer would malfunction, displaying distorted images of my reflection. I found scratches on my arms that I couldn't explain, as if something had clawed at me while I slept. My friends and family started to notice my erratic behavior, and I felt more isolated than ever. One evening, while working late, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I looked down and saw a dark bruise forming, even though I hadn't hit anything. The reflection in the mirror showed a handprint over my heart, squeezing tighter. I gasped for breath, stumbling back and clutching my chest. The reflection smirked, enjoying my suffering. Desperation took over. I couldn't live like this anymore. I decided to confront the mirror one last time. I remembered the elderly woman's warning and thought there might be more to the story of her grandmother. I visited her again, begging for more information. The woman reluctantly revealed that her grandmother had been a practitioner of dark arts, using the mirror to trap malevolent spirits. The mirror had absorbed so much darkness over the years that it had gained a life of its own. The only way to break its hold was to confront the spirit directly and shatter the connection it had to the physical world. Armed with this knowledge, I returned home and prepared myself for the confrontation. I lit candles around the room and gathered any protective charms I could find. As the night wore on, I felt the air grow colder, and the familiar glow began to emanate from the mirror. I stood in front of the mirror, staring into the eyes of my dark reflection. It grinned wickedly, knowing I was about to challenge it. I summoned all my courage and demanded that it reveal its true nature. The reflection's form twisted and contorted, transforming into a hideous, demonic version of myself. I shouted at the reflection, demanding that it release me from its curse. The reflection roared in anger, and I felt a surge of power emanating from the mirror. The room shook, and the candles flickered wildly. I knew I had to act quickly. In a moment of clarity, I remembered the locket the elderly woman had given me, a memento from her grandmother. She had mentioned it had once been used to seal the mirror's power. I held the locket up to the mirror, chanting the words the woman had taught me. The reflection screamed, its form flickering and weakening. I felt the pressure on my chest lessen, and the room grew still. The reflection's face twisted in rage and desperation as it reached out one last time. With all my strength, I hurled the locket at the mirror. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces, the shards flying across the room. A deafening roar filled the air, and the malevolent presence dissipated. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, as the oppressive weight lifted from my shoulders. In the aftermath, I gathered the shattered pieces of the mirror and buried them deep in the woods, far from my home. The locket, now drained of its power, was returned to the elderly woman. She thanked me, relief evident in her eyes, and assured me that the mirror's curse was broken. As the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences ceased, and I began to feel like myself again. The dark reflection was gone, but the memory of those terrifying nights would stay with me forever. I continued my work as a graphic designer, but with a newfound appreciation for the ordinary. I no longer saw unique or mysterious items, content with the peace I had reclaimed. The mirror had shown me the darkest parts of myself, but it had also given me the strength to confront and overcome them. And so, the dark reflection became just another story, one I would never forget, but one that no longer held power over me.